Well, good morning. We're back in Middle Earth, and we're back on Miss Fistula, who has a new friend. And this is the black marble wolf dog that you can buy from the vendor with festival tokens. He costs 40 tokens, and his name is Arthur. No, I didn't name him. That's what the game named him. And I haven't thought of anything better, so we've left the name alone. So, he's kind of cute. He's going to join us as we go to Bingo's spooky story night. Hello, Bingo. How are you? Are you ready? We will wait until it is properly dark and be off. Well, I do believe it is properly dark. All right. Let's get started. This is the perfect night to share spooky stories, Fistula. Even better than I hoped. Many of my cousin Priska's children have told me they have their own stories ready to share, and I have one of my own as well. Bolster your courage, my friend, and let us celebrate in the scary spirit of the season. If you could choose who gets to share the first story, Fistula. So, I said that there is a way to do all of them in one go. Okay, I would be happy to go first if I had a story prepared, but I think I will just listen for now. Okay, so Esmeralda does not have a story. I am not telling a story. Pick someone else, Fistula, honestly. Oh, of course, we should have known Diodas wouldn't have one. And I don't think Mama Priska has one either. Oh, I do not know very many spooky stories, but I am certain one of my children will be happy to go first. Now, I know Marigold's got one. I think Camilla has one. I don't know about the other four. I think there's only 5 total. So let's start with Marigold. I overheard this story when I was very little, and it made quite an impression. I vowed never to let fear be the master of me, and so for it hasn't and won't. Some hobbits could still learn that lesson, I'd say. Long ago, a wealthy hobbit named Longo Proudfoot lived alone in a fancy manor in nickel delving. He enjoyed expensive things and employed many servants, and it was a poorly kept secret that he did not treat them well. He enjoyed the food they prepared for him, but he was consumed with distrust, and he feared they would sneak into the pantry and steal the ingredients within for their own families. So it was that Longo had strong locks and heavy bars installed on his pantry, and carried the only keys. When it was time for his servants to prepare dinner, he would march them to the door, carefully unlock everything, and stand by watching while they removed what they needed. He carefully marked the quantities of each foodstuff, and if it seemed more was being withdrawn than was necessary, he had strong words at the ready. This continued for some time, but still Longo was certain that his servants were stealing his food. I cannot say for sure, but it seems to me that the extreme measures he used to prevent it must have inflamed the servants' desire to perpetrate some thievery, but that might just be my perspective as a rebellious hobbit. At any rate, there came a day when Longo's suspicions were at their greatest level, and he called all of his servants into the sitting room. I no longer have need of your services, he proclaimed, and dismissed them all. Go steal from someone else's larder, he cried as they streamed from the manor. That night, as Longo lay in his bed, he found that his suspicions had not been eased by dismissing all of his servants. On the contrary, now he worried they would not be bound by loyalty and might break into the manor to gain access to his pantry. Where were his keys? Ah, here they are. Still, they might have already performed the deed and replaced the keys when they were done. Longo hurried to the pantry and found the many locks as he left them earlier in the day. He unlocked everything one by one and threw open the doors, revealing shelf upon shelf of useful ingredient and foodstuffs. As he went inside for a closer look, he brushed the door by mistake, and it swung shut behind him. If he had not been so focused on counting the bags of flour and inventorying the pickling jars, He might have heard the heavy bar fall into place outside the door, but he did not. No one knows how long it took before anyone noticed they had not seen Longo Proudfoot set foot from his manor for some time, for he had told his servants not to return, and he had no friends or family to check on him. He might have lasted for quite some time in that well-stocked pantry, but in the end, after all, does it really matter if it was days or if it was months? But hobbits in the Shire have reported feelings of discomfort in their own pantries late at night, as if they were being watched from behind the shelves, and some folk have claimed to see eyes peering out at them from between the bags and boxes, eyes full of jealousy and distrust. So, if you click on the X instead of clicking on Next, you will not have advanced the story and can continue reading quests or stories. Now, Camellia has one. When we came here to see Cousin Bingo and celebrate the Harvest Festival with him, we crossed the Brandywine Bridge and took the road by stock. Do you all remember looking across the water and seeing the farms of Bridgeford? My story took place at one of those farms, and the events told herein happened not so long ago. I know these events are true, though they sound unbelievable. The story was told to me by someone who would know the truth of the matter. The farm stood right on the river's edge and belonged to a hobbit named Everard. He was a Bolger, as many of the folk of the Budgeford. But whereas most of the Bolgers are fine farmers, Everard struggled daily to maintain his crop. Either it was taken by blight, or savaged by crows, or munched by rabbits, and on many occasions he had to depend upon the charity of his neighbors for his family to survive. Everard blamed his scarecrow most of all. No matter how hard he tried, he could not fashion a suitably frightening scarecrow. Every day the birds came to feast on his crops undeterred. He was at his wits' end on a Tuesday, and even as he glowered at his failing scarecrow, a raven flew down from the sky and lighted upon it. "Oh, I'll teach you what you deserve," Everard growled as he swung his trowel at the bird. The raven flew just out of reach, and then landed once again upon the scarecrow's straw hat. "You seem upset, friend," the raven said. This set Everard back a bit, for while he had heard stories of speaking birds, he had never encountered one himself. "Upset?" he managed. "Of course! You birds won't leave my crops alone, you vile things." "It does seem like you deserve better," the raven responded. "If you like, I can speak to my people and see if perhaps we could come to an arrangement. I'd be willing to do this for you if you let me sample some of these grains." Everett thought it over and could see few drawbacks to the raven's proposal. After all, one bird's appetite would be less than a whole flock, and by giving up some of the crops he might secure safety for the rest. "I agree," he told the bird, and watched as it devoured some of the crop and flew away. The next day he saw little improvement, and birds continued to harry his crops. He was certain he would not see the raven again, but to his surprise the bird appeared and spoke. "They said they want to help you out, but they just can't resist the taste of the crops you're growing here. They said what you need is a better scarecrow. That would make it much more difficult for them to fly near." "I have tried to make one scarier," Everett told him, "but it's just no good." "Let's see what we can do," the raven replied. The Wednesday sun crossed the sky, and as dusk approached, Everett's wife sent their daughter Holly to bring Everett in for supper. As Holly approached the field, she marveled at how lifelike appeared the second scarecrow her father had made. He must have spent all day fashioning it. It looked just like a hobbit. As she watched, a raven hopped among the grains, squawked, and flew away. Okay, that one's creepy. That one is genuinely creepy. I'll let you think about the ending of that story for a bit. And Bosco has a story for us. Odo Grubb was the finest fisherman the Shire had ever seen, and none who cast their line today can hope to rival his skill. Nor should they. If you believe the tale I am about to tell, I believe it, for it is surely true. Odo's name was known far and wide throughout the Shire in his day, and it seemed he couldn't find any fish in any body of water Not just fish, but fish of a size you would hardly have expected. Where most hobbits would pull minnows of middling size from their hook, Odo could cast into the river and take from it fish of incredible beauty, their rainbow scales glittering creatures of a size that no hobbit had ever drawn before. So skilled was he that he dared clamber in a boat of his own making and fish far from the banks, which was very unusual for hobbits of his day, and indeed remained so. Yet it also proved unwise, for there came a day when a great behemoth of a fish seized his line and pulled his boat rapidly along with the current. Most hobbits would have dropped their rod and rowed to safety, but Odo had a reputation to uphold. He braced himself against the sides and held on to the rod for dear life. "I will make you mine," he proclaimed to the great fish as it pulled it along. "I will be the victor in this contest, or my name is not Odo Grubb, Master Fisherman." The battle lasted for days, and the mighty fish pulled Odo's boat from the Shire and into lands unknown to all hobbits. At last, consumed by hunger and weariness, Odo released his hold on the fishing rod, and it flew out of the boat and into the water. "I give up," he said to no one as his boat slowed from its rapid pursuit. He picked up the oars and prepared to begin the long journey homeward. Then something bumped into the underside of his boat, and the oars broke from their locks and fell into the water. But his rapid journey southward continued. "What is happening?" he cried aloud, and peered over the side into the water below. The great fish had not left him, but remained, pushing the boat on its southward course. "Where are you taking me?" Odo demanded, but the fish did not respond. This continued for many days until Odo was faint with hunger. He collapsed in the base of his boat, and once again wondered when the great fish would let him go. "Did you bring me here just to let me die?" he cried aloud, too weak to even shake his fist at the cruel skies. Then he heard a splash, and another. Small fish were leaping from the water and landing in the boat. What luck!" he gasped, and grabbed them with both hands. He ate them raw, which he would have found distasteful back home, but on this terrible day he was glad for the unexpected gift. His vigor renewed, Odo was now strong enough to keep watch from the front of his boat, and that is how he saw the great sea approaching and the river's end. The boat slowed, and the great fish halted its pushing. It lifted its great head from the water, and Odo saw that the creature was not alone. There were fish of every imaginable size and shape surrounding his boat. "What do you want?" he asked. As Odo surveyed the vast variety of the diverse species that surrounded him, he found that he recognized every type of fish. At one point or another, in his esteemed career, he had caught at least one of each of these types, and in some cases, many. "You hold me responsible," he whispered. You came for me for revenge?" The fish stared at him with bulbous eyes, their gills working silently just beneath the surface of the water. But you fed me. Why keep me alive?" There was no response from the silent assembled, but suddenly they moved as one. Hundreds of fish pressed against the side and bottom of Odo's boat, and the silvery rainbow multitude forced the boat from the fresh water of the river into the salt of the great sea, dying as they went. And so Odo Grubb paid the price for his success. Give a thought to him on this night, floating on the great sea far away, never to return. Okay, so we just saw what happens when you click Nest. He is out there still floating on the waves in the moonlight. Well, that was certainly something. Who should go next? Okay, so we have one. We have two. We have three more to go. All right, so let me take a drink. My story is a cautionary tale, but I urge you not to discount it, for it is also true, very true. The events of this story took place not so very long ago, shortly after the new homesteads were made available in the Shire. A very old, and by most accounts rather unpleasant hobbit, the widow Spinner, was enamored of one of the homes on Myrtle Court, and she greatly desired to purchase it. She was not the only interested buyer, of course, but she had the most money to spend, and she was able to outbid her chief rival, a young hobbit named Bob Newbuck. She purchased the most desirable home on Myrtle Court, and she lived there for several months, much to Bob's consternation. Well, Bob wasn't one to give up, even when losing a contest, and he made it a point to pass by Myrtle Court as often as possible, scowling in the direction of the widow spinner's home at every opportunity. One night as he passed by the lane, he heard a strange voice calling in the darkness. He looked more closely and saw the widow spinner standing in the yard beside her burrow, wearing a long nightshirt and a sleeping cap. Crazy old bat, Bob thought to himself as he continued down the lane to his own comparably disappointing and cramped burrow. Thinking back on that curious sight some time later, Bob decided he might have been the last person to see the widow spinner before she disappeared. Indeed, no one else could tell the sheriffs what had happened to her or where she had gone. Bob was as helpful as he could be, and he told them what little he knew. But it was not long before the widow spinner was declared dead, and 6 Myrtle Court was once again available to purchase. Bob wasted no time and purchased the house, and it was everything he hoped it would be. He decorated it to his liking and lived there happily for several months. He was lying in bed one night after midnight when he heard a voice. "Help me," it called from somewhere outside Bob's cozy bedroom. "What is that?" Bob wondered to himself, and pulled the covers up to his chin. "Help me," the voice called again. Bob squeezed his eyes shut, but then decided that the morning was too far off, and there would be no escaping the plaintive voice. He followed its call out of his bedroom, down the hall, and finally outside. The air was cold and the night was dark, but he was able to hear the voice clearly enough to follow it to the side yard, where the well was dug. Sure enough, the voice echoed up from the dark hole in the ground. "Help me," it asked again. Bob leaned over the hole and scowled. "Spinner, if that's you down there," he began. But he wasn't able to finish the thought before something slammed into his back and he slipped on the wet grass. Bob tumbled down the well and everything went dark. When he awoke, he was lying half in and half out of the water, deep inside the well. A crevice in the wall opened into a chamber dug out of the dirt, and he was wedged painfully in that crack. He felt woozy, and it was hard to make his eyes focus. Gradually they did, and he saw the widow spinner, sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall of the dirt chamber, a teapot and several plates arranged around her. "Help me," the voice said once again, and Bob realized that it came not from the widow spinner, but from somewhere much closer, right by his ear. "Help me set out the tea," it continued. "She will be so happy to have someone over for tea." Something pulled at his arm roughly, and Bob disappeared into the dirt chamber. He was never seen again. I heard that 6 Myrtle Court is available for purchase again, if you don't mind tea at midnight. Well, that one was an interesting story for sure. You all know I love napping, and it has been the subject of some teasing throughout the years, but I tell you this, Mother told us this story when we were very young, and if some of you forgot it, well, I never did. Once you have heard it again, you will be jealous of my afternoon naps and my early bedtimes, I don't doubt it. Many years ago, a hobbit named Hampson Broadbeam lived in the town of Overhill. He was a woodworker of much renown, and folk came from all throughout the shire to buy his crafted goods. You can still find oaken chests bearing his mark in hobbit holes throughout all the 4 farthings, though Hampson himself is only remembered in this tale. He was a victim of his own success. There were so many orders from so many customers that he had to stay awake late into the evening to finish each crafted good, stumbling in bed as the first beams of light began to shine through the trees on Overhill. His work began to suffer, and he feared that his reputation would be tarnished unless something changed, and quickly. One day, Hampson was drowsily walking through the Bendable Wood to an area where he was accustomed to felling trees for his workbench. As he approached the location, he felt the hair on his toes stand up. Something was watching him from the tree canopy. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he called out. "I live here," a thin, reedy voice replied. Hampson squinted up at the branches, but he could not see the speaker. I don't see you, Hampson said. Am I asleep? I must have fallen asleep somewhere on the trail, and now I'm dreaming. I hope no animals find my body while I sleep. You seem pretty awake to me, the mysterious voice answered. At least you're not asleep, but perhaps you should be. Your limbs hang loosely, your eyelids droop, and I see exhaustion in every part of you. Hampson was impressed that this strange new acquaintance could read the situation so clearly, and he described the many demands on his time that prevented him from sleeping. If only I didn't need to sleep, he exclaimed. I need worry about nothing. At first the voice from the tree canopy did not respond. Then a small twig with red berries fell from aloft, landing in the dirt by Hampson's feet. What's this? He asked. I do not need to sleep, the voice responded. Eat those berries, and you will not need to sleep either. Normally, Hampson would not have trusted such a gift from a stranger, particularly one so strange as this, but he so desperately wanted the berries to do as the voice promised that he did not give it a second thought. He ate them greedily, but felt no different. He asked how long it would take for him to notice the effect, but the voice did not respond. Angrily, Hampson went home. He didn't even care to collect the wood that had brought him to the forest in the first place. So disappointed and out of sorts was he. That night Hampson fashioned a set of chairs requested by a wealthy patron, and the work was delicate enough that he found himself quite engaged and still awake by dawn. In fact, his drowsiness has departed, and he worked all the rest of the day and into the following evening. Can it be, he asked the empty burrow, did those berries take away my need of sleep? It seemed to be so, and Hampson had never been so happy. The following weeks were a delight for the woodworker, and he finished every order set before him. When there were no more orders to fill, he read his small collection of books, and he felt he'd become a much smarter and more cultured gentle hobbit. When there were no more books to read, he took long walks through the Shire at night, and marveled at the nighttime beauty of the countryside. When that finally lost its luster, he returned to his home and lay awake in his bed. He had exhausted everything he wanted to do, and now he was bored. All he wanted to do was close his eyes and sleep, but try as he might, he would never sleep again. As bad as he had felt before, he now felt worse. Every day felt like an eternity, and every night felt like two. Hampson walked every inch of the bendable wood, calling for the mysterious voice to return and give him different berries, but as far as I know, he never found it. He might be walking there still, just over there, seeking an end to his endless wakefulness. Well, that's kind of creepy. All right, so we have one more, and that is Angelica here, and I will take a sip of water real quick. Many, many years ago, long before our family trees had so much as sprouted, there was a small village on the banks of the Brandywine, not far from where Stock is located today. One of the prominent figures in the village was a fellow named Gerd Goodcliff. He had the respect of his neighbors, and was consulted about many of the matters that faced the town. It was widely held that when the time came for the mayor to step down, Gerd would easily be chosen to take his place. One day, Gerd was walking among the reeds at the river's edge when he heard a small voice among the rushes. How curious, he thought to himself, and he squatted down in the mud to find the owner of the voice. Finding nothing, he prepared to stand once again, but before he could, a large black cat padded out of the reeds. Well, hello there, he greeted the cat and turned to go. Hello yourself, it said to him. Gerd was most surprised, for this was the first time a cat had ever spoken to him. Once he recovered himself, he found that the cat was not simply talkative, but quite friendly as well. It introduced itself as Green Eyes, and said it came from a faraway land in search of a home. Gerd was happy to offer Green Eyes such a place as his own humble burrow, and Green Eyes contributed to it in his own way, keeping mice and other undesirables away from Gerd's pantry. In time, Green Eyes proved capable at finding much more than mice. He would stalk through the village, creeping into half-open windows, and pushing open unlatched doors. He learned many interesting rumors and overheard much gossip about the hobbits of the town, and he recounted each salacious morsel to Gerd with delight. Gerd began to look upon his neighbors with distaste and distrust, and he found he could no longer stand to engage in conversation with them. He became cold and distant, and other hobbits avoided him when they saw him on the road, crossing to the other side rather than speak with him. When they returned to their homes, Green Eyes would follow behind and listen while they called Gerd off-putting, odd, and unfriendly. The cat recounted these stories to Gerd with regret, but his tail twitched back and forth happily. "I don't need these liars as friends anyway," Gerd told him one day. "I have you, Green Eyes, and you're the only friend this hobbit needs." Green Eyes nodded, his tail twitching. Not long afterward, a day came when Gerd could not find Green Eyes anywhere. Despairing, and certain that one of his neighbors had done some harm to his friend, he ran screaming out into the center of town. Folk watched his raving progress through the village, and their whispers were no longer hushed or hidden. Madly, Gerd ran down to the banks of the river, and there at last he found his friend. Green Eyes stood among the reeds, and with his two front paws he pushed a small boat out into the river. He clambered onto it, and turned back to face Gerd as it floated out on the current. "Why, Green Eyes, why must you leave?" Gerd called out to him. Green Eyes did not respond, but only watched him silently until the current bore him away and out of sight. No one knows what happened to Gerd Goodcliff after that, but he never came back to town, and he never became mayor. But there are some who say that if the moon is high in the sky like it is tonight, you might catch a glimpse of Green Eyes on his boat, floating away down the river, his tail twitching, twitching, twitching. And that is the last of the stories, so we will continue the quest. So if you see a black cat, stay away. It might be Green Eyes. Nonsense, these stories are all rubbish. Not at all. Is it my turn? I have a good story to tell. All right, Bingo, we're ready. The story I'm about to tell is older than each of the others we have heard tonight, for it dates from the earliest days of the Shire, and it was recorded in very few places. I found it in a book that Fistula retrieved from the library Great Smiles, but it seems to me there were few copies of that book ever made. Once I tell you the story, it will live on, and you should all remember it. Even in the earliest days of the Shire, festivals were already important to our distant ancestors. Were there boffins even then? I'd like to think so, although I have not seen a family tree that extends back that far. Certainly some branches of our family tree bear similar names to those earliest inhabitants of the Shire, and I have seen accounts of Esmeraldas, Marigolds, Griffos, and Foscos. But I am getting distracted. A young girl by the name of Minigilda desired to win a dancing competition, but her chief rival, one Peony, excelled at the art and bested her at every opportunity. Minigilda was obsessed with winning the great prize, and she became convinced that Peony owed her success to the violet shoes she always wore. Minigilda hatched a plan to steal the shoes. She surprised Peony on the banks of the Brandywine and demanded she hand over the shoes. Peony refused and said that there was a spell on those shoes. They would only work at her command, and they would do Minigilda no good at all. Minigilda was not dissuaded. In fact, the revelation that the shoes were enchanted filled her with happiness. Alas, an explanation for her continued failure to beat Peony at dancing. Peony removed the shoes and threw them at her rival. "Fine," she cried, "have them. I will tell my father what you've done, and you won't be allowed to dance at all." This was a mistake, but Peony did not understand the rage that seethed within Minigilda's heart. Minigilda charged at her with arms raised, and she pushed Peony into the river. She never surfaced. Minigilda put her on her stolen shoes and returned to town. There were whispers, but no one had seen her encounter with Peony, and it was believed that Peony may have run away, seeking her fortune beyond the borders of the Shire. Minigilda did not care. Her every thought was bent on winning the next dance contest. A few weeks later, Minigilda wore her new shoes and danced on the stage before all the assembled hobbits. Everyone cheered and applauded, for they had never seen such dancing before, not even when Peony had participated. Minigilda was the clear winner, and yet something was wrong. Someone tried to present Minigilda with the winning ribbon, but she merely continued to dance. Everyone applauded again, but she showed no signs of stopping. "I think that's enough, dear," someone called. But now there were tears streaming from Minigilda's face, and the assemblage came to understand that she wanted to stop, but could not. Folk rushed the stage and sought to remove the violet shoes, but they wouldn't come off. Minigilda's feet flew left and right, here and there, but even when she fell into a stupor, the dance continued. At last it stopped. But Minigilda's dancing days were done. The shoes were packed into a box, and it was sealed away, hidden in a dusty corner of a forgotten burrow. Hobbit spoke for a time of Minigilda and the cursed shoes, but eventually the story passed into legend, and folks doubted if it had ever really happened, even as they feared to speak of it. And that's why hobbits never wear shoes. Huh, that can't be true. How do you know? It's just rubbish. All these stories are nonsense. Well, it's interesting you should say that, Dino. Because I went and had a chat with Brombeard Foxtail at the Matham House. And he did some digging around, and he found the very same shoes from the story. And here they are. What? That can't be. There's no way these are the same shoes. Does anyone want to try them on? I'll do it. I'm not afraid. Esmeralda, are you sure? I'm not scared, Mother. They fit perfectly. See? Nothing to worry about. All right, Esmeralda, you should probably take them off now. I can't. I can't stop. Esmeralda, oh no! Fistula, help her. The shoes won't come off. No, no, Esmeralda, it's all true. It's all true. Ha ha, did you see? Ha 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 ha. What fun. What do you think, Fistula? It seems to me that Esmeralda should try acting at the Frostbluff Theater. That was a convincing performance. I'd say we certainly gave Dino a taste of the season, wouldn't you? Oh, it's all in good fun. He'll be fine. He just needed a good scare. We wouldn't have carried out this trick if Priska hadn't given her permission, and she thought it might do him some good, just as we did. It's the season for scares, after all. Oh, they pulled a prank on Dino Das to scare him. Ha ha, that was great, Fistula. I think we finally managed to frighten the unfrightenable. The spirit of the scare is still alive and well in the Shire, despite rumors to the contrary. You had better go and check on him. We don't want him falling into any trouble on our account, after all. Dino Das ran off to the northwest. He's probably laughing about it by now, although he'll never admit it. All right, so we're going to get on our horse and go find Dino Das. At least it's very nice of Bingo to consider looking for his cousin after he's given him such a fright, isn't it? And since we are so close to the end of this quest chain, we're going to go ahead and finish it up. So, this one might get a little bit long. You have found Dinodas. That was horrible, Fistula, and very mean. I expect a full apology. You should not go around trying to scare people for no reason. You explained that Bingo believed his cousin might enjoy the Harvestmath festival more if he let himself be scared from time to time, and Dinodas flails his arm wildly. Bingo thinks nothing scares me. I had become a victim of my acting skills, Fistula, and gave too fine a performance. Do you remember when we explored the haunted burrow? I worked so hard to see through the spooky atmosphere and lay it as bare as a sham, but deep down I was full of fear. Every bump, every sudden movement, every deep shadow seemed to promise some new form of terror. Foolish Fistula, I do not fear nothing, I fear everything. Now you know my secret shame, and I trust you will keep it to yourself. It all began some time ago when I offered to walk Celandine Brandybuck back to her home after a dinner party my mother hosted. Celandine was very happy to have the company, but as we began to walk, I saw that the hour was much later than I thought. The night was dark and the shadows were deep, and my blood ran cold at every creepy sound. I knew if I did not do something, Celandine would know me for a coward, cry disaster. In order to mask my fear, I adopted a brazen attitude and mocked every fear I felt. It was all an act at which I had become all too practiced. Dinodas frowns. Still, Bingo is my cousin, and that was a mean trick for any family member to perform, at any remove, and no matter the distance. Speaking of distance, I was on my way back to Greenfields when you caught up to me. I turned around because I heard something scary and dropped my pack and ran back this way. Do you think you can retrace my steps to the northwest and find my pack? I don't think I have the courage to go back and look for it. So he needs me to go get his pack for him because he's too scared to go do it himself. And fortunately for us, we are over level these bears. A natural blue fire blazes in the darkened wood. Talk to the spectral vision. The spectral vision stares past you into the dark space among the trees. When it speaks, the sound reverberates in your ears and sets your teeth on edge. There can be no reparations for the hurt that has been done. In 1 year, all will fear the parting of the wood. None will escape the curse of the eerie acres. Despair and repair to your holes, for none but one will laugh when all is done. The vision stops speaking, and the space between the trees falls silent. All is cold. So we've actually seen a real spook. Bingo has come here, and he apologized for the trick. And all is well now, and we don't need to discuss that thing I told you, Fistula, all right? Good. You give Dinodas his pack. After a moment's thought, you tell him that you saw something unusual nearby. Oh? What was it? Actually, perhaps you should tell Cousin Bingo. I don't think I need to hear about it. I don't believe in that sort of rubbish. No, indeed. I apologize to Dinodas for our scary trick, but I think it did him some good. Now, what has worried you up into such confusion? You quietly tell Bingo about the spectral vision you saw in the wood, and he looks at you skeptically. Is this a joke or a trick of your own? You really saw this thing? What fun! A mysterious apparition appeared in the wood. How delightful! I simply must see it for myself. Let's go, Fistula. And we must return to the location. Okay. Return to the location of the spectral bit. And of course, always a great time for our good friend Scam to call. You know this was the location, but the apparition is gone. There's nothing here. And that's even more scary. I do not like this Fistula. I mean, it's all nonsense. There was nothing here to begin with, and it's very cruel of you to pretend otherwise. It's gone. I'm disappointed, but that just makes me even more curious about it. What is going on here, Fistula? What does Dinodas think? Perhaps afterwards you could circle around to that building on top of the hill and see some sign of the apparition. So we got to climb up. And, okay. So he has low enough level that he's getting attacked by these mobs. He seems to be handling it like a champ, though. You see nothing unusual on approach to the ruined building. You stand atop the ruin, but see no sign of the spectral apparition. Now, we go talk to Bingo again. And he is just down here. You didn't see anything. I am not surprised. Whatever was here, it clearly does not want to be seen again. I wonder why. My mind is full of questions, Fistula. This is truly an autumnal mystery. I need some time to think it over. I will meet you back at the party tree. This wood has become very spooky, and while Dinodas may not fear anything, I have to confess that this place has given me the chills. I love it, but perhaps we should head back to Hobbiton all the same. So, next step is to head back to Hobbiton. And I was going to say we'll use a mithril coin, but we're not that far away from Hobbiton, so we will just ride. Well, that was quite interesting. A bit of a spooky mystery. And I will admit, when this quest change showed up on the first year, it was a cliffhanger mystery. But next time we will start the second part of Bingo's quest chain. And, well, we'll see. We are almost at the party tree. I'm glad I didn't waste that mithril coin. And I'm going right past it. Real bright. And I went right past Bingo, too. Sorry, Bingo. You are kind of short. I am very excited about this autumnal mystery, Fistula. I have read many scary stories, and they always delight my imagination, but I have never been involved in one myself. Tell me once again what the ghostly fellow had to say. You recount the words of the spectral vision. There can be no reparations for the hurt that has been done. In 1 year, all will fear the parting of the wood. None will escape the curse of the eerie acres. Despair and repair to your holes, for none but one will laugh when all is done. Do I have that right? I have to admit, I do not know what any of this means, Fistula, but it sounds to me like we have a year to figure it out. I will do some thinking. It sounds to me as if next year's Harvest Festival might be something, though. I can't wait, but I guess I must. And of course, doing that gets you 24 harvest tokens, so it's worth doing, if not for nothing else but all the extra harvest tokens you get, especially if you happen to be wanting a thing or two. And with that, we are done for the day. And next time, we'll start on part 2 of Bingo's Harvestmath quest chain. But until then, bye for now.